Looking back, I should have known better than to trust Diana Matthews with our house keys. But when you're rushing to catch a flight with an excited 10-year-old and your husband insists his mother is trying to be helpful, you sometimes make decisions you'll regret for the rest of your life. It's just 5 days, Mark had said. Mom will water the plants and check on Max. She knows how important he is to Sophie. Important was an understatement. Max, our 8-month-old golden retriever, wasn't just a pet. He was Sophie's therapy dog, specially trained to help with her anxiety and panic attacks. We'd spent months on waiting lists and used our entire savings to get him. But watching my daughter finally sleep through the night made every penny worth it. The first 3 days at Disney World were magical. Sophie, usually overwhelmed by crowds, stayed calm with the help of her Max videos, short clips we'd taken of him that she watched whenever she felt anxious. It was the longest she'd ever been separated from him, but she was coping beautifully. Then came the call. Amanda. Diana's voice dripped with fake concern. Something terrible has happened. Max, he got out somehow. I've looked everywhere, put up posters. I feel just awful. Sophie, who'd been showing me her Mickey Mouse ears, froze. Even at 10, she could tell when something was wrong. I watched the color drain from her face as she processed her grandmother's words coming through the speakerphone. What do you mean he got out? My prosecutor instincts kicked in. The backyard fence is 6 feet high, and Max never tries to escape. Well, perhaps if you trained him better. Diana's familiar passive-aggressive tone crept in. Anyway, I've done everything I can. I just thought you should know. The line went dead, and Sophie's world collapsed. The panic attack that followed was the worst I'd seen in years. Not even her emergency medication helped. We ended up cutting our vacation short and booking the first flight home. But something wasn't adding up. Call it my years in the DA's office or just maternal intuition. Diana's story had too many holes. Max was microchipped. He wore a GPS collar. He had never shown any interest in escaping. And Diana had always hated him, calling him a waste of money when we first got him. The house was spotless when we returned, too spotless. Max's bed, toys, and food bowls were gone. Even his favorite rope toy that usually lay in the corner had vanished. It was as if he'd never existed. Maybe Grandma put his things away. Sophie suggested hopefully, her voice trembling. But I saw the truth in her eyes. She knew something was very wrong. Mark immediately went to check the security cameras, but surprise, the system had been accidentally unplugged during our absence. Diana's first mistake. She didn't know about the backup cloud storage. While Mark called his mother demanding answers, I sat in my home office, laptop open, watching the footage. 4 hours of nothing then, bingo. A silver Mercedes. Not Diana's car, but one I recognized as belonging to her country club friend, Barbara, pulled into our driveway. The timestamp showed 2:14 p.m., just 1 day after we'd left. The audio was crystal clear. Are you sure about this, Diana? Barbara's voice. Of course, they'll believe he ran away. Besides, that dog was making Sophie soft. She needs to toughen up, not rely on some animal. The buyers are paying cash. $5,000. Can you believe they'd pay that much for a mutt? My hands shook as I pressed play on the second video. Diana and Barbara leading Max out to the car. My daughter's beloved companion wagging his tail trustingly. Diana checking her phone, laughing at something. Then her voice, leaving a voicemail. Catherine, it's Diana Matthews. Tell your sister she can pick up the dog tomorrow. Just remember our agreement. If anyone asks, you bought him from a breeder. $5,000 is a lot of money for keeping a little secret, isn't it? I sat there, rage building in my chest as more pieces fell into place. Catherine Wilson. The name rang a bell. A quick social media search confirmed it. Her sister lived in Brentwood, about an hour away. More importantly, she'd posted a photo 3 days ago. Her teenage daughter with a familiar golden retriever. Any luck with your mom? I asked Mark as he came into the office. She's sticking to her story. Says she feels terrible. But these things happen. He ran his fingers through his hair, a nervous habit he shared with Sophie. Maybe we should just get another dog. I held up my hand and played the videos. I watched his face change from confusion to shock to something I'd never seen before. Pure, unrestrained anger. I'll kill her, he whispered. No, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. We're going to do this my way. Call your family. All of them. Tell them to come over tomorrow afternoon. Your mother too. Say we need your support during this difficult time. Amanda, what are you planning? I smiled, already dialing an old colleague's number. Remember how your mother always brags that she knows all the best people in town? Well, so do I, and unlike her, my connections come with badges and warrants. Sophie appeared in the doorway, clutching her empty therapy journal, the one she used to draw pictures of Max. Mom, are we going to find him? Yes, baby, we are. And Grandma Diana is about to learn a very important lesson about messing with our family. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. My former colleague in the police department was more than happy to help, especially when I mentioned the interstate sale of a registered therapy animal. The GPS data from Max's collar gave us his exact location, and Diana's carefully crafted plan had one fatal flaw. She'd never considered that her daughter-in-law might still have friends in law enforcement. By the time Diana arrived for the family support gathering the next day, everything was in place. She swept in wearing her designer suit and fake sympathy, probably expecting to play the role of concerned grandmother once again. Sophie, darling, she cooed, reaching for my daughter. Grandma's so sorry about Max. Sometimes these things just happen. Sophie stepped back, clutching my hand. The past day had been hard, but I promised her something better was coming. She just had to be brave for a little longer. Actually, Mom, Mark said, his voice steady. We need to talk about what really happened to Max. Diana's smile flickered for just a moment. I told you what happened. If you're suggesting, why don't we all sit down? I suggested, gesturing to the living room where the rest of the family was gathering. I have something interesting to play for everyone. Diana Matthews was about to learn that she'd made 3 crucial mistakes. She hurt my daughter, she betrayed our trust, and most importantly, she forgot what I used to do for a living. The living room crackled with tension as our family settled in. Mark's sisters, Emma and Grace, sat with their husbands, while his brother, Peter, leaned against the fireplace. Diana took her usual throne, the antique armchair she gifted us last Christmas, probably so she'd always have the best seat in our home. Before we start, Diana announced, I want everyone to know how deeply sorry I am about Max. I've already called the local shelters and I held up my hand. Let's cut to the chase, shall we? I connected my phone to our speakers. I'd like everyone to hear something. The recording played crystal clear. Diana and Barbara's conversation about selling Max, the phone call to Catherine, the sound of money being counted. With each word, Diana's face grew paler, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the armchair's upholstery. That's clearly edited, she sputtered when it finished. Amanda's trying to frame me because she's angry about an accident. An accident? I pulled out a folder. Like the accidental transfer of $5,000 to your account on the exact day Max disappeared. Or the accidental GPS tracking that shows Max's collar at Catherine Wilson's sister's house in Brentwood. Emma gasped. Grace covered her mouth. Peter just shook his head, muttering, Jesus, Mom, you sold my dog. Sophie's voice was small but steady. Why, Grandma? He helped me. He was my friend. Sweetheart. Diana tried to reach for her, but Sophie backed away. I did it for your own good. You were becoming too dependent. A child your age shouldn't need a dog to function normally. Normal? Mark's voice cracked like a whip. You want to talk about normal, Mom? How about we discuss how normal it is to sell a registered therapy animal? Because Amanda's friends at the DA's office are very interested in that conversation. Diana's mask finally cracked. You wouldn't dare. I'm your mother. And she's my daughter, Mark replied. Guess which one I'm choosing? I can explain everything. Diana stood, switching tactics. Catherine's daughter, she needed Max more. She has real problems, not just anxiety that could be cured if Amanda wasn't such an overprotective. The doorbell rang. That would be Officer Martinez, I said calmly, along with Catherine Wilson and her sister. Would you like to explain to them how selling a stolen therapy dog across state lines is actually a federal offense? Diana sank back into her chair. You're bluffing. Mom, Peter stepped forward. Stop. Just stop. We all heard the recording. You got caught. For once in your life, face the consequences. I opened the door to reveal not just Officer Martinez, but Catherine Wilson looking terrified, her sister red-faced and angry. And between them, pulling excitedly on his leash, was Max. Sophie's cry of joy pierced the air. Max broke free and bounded toward her, knocking her onto the couch in his excitement to lick her face. The panic that had haunted her eyes for the past 2 days melted away as she buried her face in his fur. Mrs. Matthews, Officer Martinez stepped into the room. We need to discuss the sale of this therapy animal. There's been a misunderstanding. Diana stood, straightening her jacket. I was merely rehoming. Save it for your lawyer, Catherine interrupted. I've already given the police my statement. You told me Sophie had become, what was the phrase? Too attached to a stupid dog, said the family decided to rehome him. You told us Sophie was a troubled child who needed to learn independence, her sister added. That the dog was making her worse. We had no idea he was a registered therapy animal. Diana's carefully constructed lies were unraveling thread by thread. She looked around the room, finding no allies among her shell-shocked children. The money has been returned, Catherine said. We don't want any part of this. We're so sorry, she added, looking at Sophie. We didn't know. As Officer Martinez began reading Diana her rights, she made one last attempt. Mark, you can't let them do this. I'm your mother. Yes, you are, Mark replied. And you're also under arrest. Dad would be ashamed of you. The mention of her late husband, the one person whose opinion she ever truly valued, finally broke her. Diana Matthews, pillar of society and self-appointed family matriarch, crumpled into her throne-like chair and began to sob. After the police led Diana away and statements were taken, our family sat in stunned silence. Max lay with his head in Sophie's lap, her hands stroking his fur as if afraid he'd disappear again. I knew Mom could be controlling, Emma said finally. But this, selling Sophie's therapy dog. Power, Peter replied. It was never about the dog. It was about control. Sophie was getting better with Max's help, becoming more independent. Mom couldn't handle that. She'll probably get off with a fine and community service, I said. Her country club friends will rally around her, call it a misunderstanding. But we won't, Mark declared. No more holidays at her house. No more letting her manipulate us. No more pretending her behavior is normal. Grace nodded. The kids have been scared of her for years. Maybe it's time for all of us to set some boundaries. As our family began the painful process of acknowledging years of Diana's manipulation, Sophie tugged on my sleeve. Mom, can we take Max to his favorite park? I promised him in my head that when we found him, we'd go straight there. I smiled, watching her face, clear, calm, and free from anxiety for the first time in days. Of course, baby, let's all go. And so our family, minus one manipulative matriarch, headed to the park. Watching Sophie run with Max, hearing her laugh as he chased a ball, I knew we'd made the right choice. Sometimes, protecting your child means standing up to family, even if that family member sits on a self-made throne and wields guilt like a weapon. Mark squeezed my hand. Thank you, he whispered, for being stronger than I was. We were strong together, I corrected him. That's what family really means. 3 weeks after what our family now called the Max incident, the ripple effects were still spreading through our community. Diana's arrest had made the local news. Apparently stealing and selling a registered therapy dog was scandalous enough to warrant coverage, even in our drama-filled town. Her country club friends predictably closed ranks around her. Barbara mysteriously lost the phone that contained evidence of their conversation. Others claimed they'd had no idea about Diana's plan, despite having watched her execute it. But their support meant little now that the truth was out. The charges were exactly what I predicted, a hefty fine, community service at the local animal shelter, of the irony, and a restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of our home or Sophie's school. Diana Matthews, who had spent decades cultivating her image as the perfect grandmother, was now legally barred from seeing her grandchild. You've ruined my life, she wrote in a lengthy email to Mark. My reputation is destroyed. My friends look at me differently, all because you couldn't understand I was trying to help Sophie become stronger. Mark's response was simple. No, Mom, you ruined your own life when you decided to hurt my daughter. Don't contact us again. Sophie was flourishing. With Max back home, her anxiety levels had dropped significantly. She even started a blog about therapy dogs, sharing her story to help other kids understand there was nothing wrong with needing support. One afternoon, while Sophie and Max were at their weekly training session, Emma and Grace came over with news. Mom's selling her house, Emma announced. She's moving to Florida to live with Aunt Patricia. Running away, you mean, Grace corrected. Now that her perfect image is shattered, she can't stand to face everyone. She left this, Emma said, placing a small velvet box on our coffee table. Said it was supposed to be Sophie's when she grew out of her weakness. Inside was Diana's prized cameo necklace, passed down through generations. A note attached read, "For Sophie, when she's strong enough to not need a dog as a crutch." I closed the box with a snap. Sophie's stronger than Diana ever was. She faces her challenges head-on instead of pretending they don't exist. That evening, as we watched Sophie and Max play in the backyard, Mark asked, "Should we tell her about the necklace?" "No," I replied. "She doesn't need family heirlooms with strings attached. She has something better. Unconditional love, both from us and from Max." The doorbell rang. Peter stood outside with his teenage daughters, holding a large wrapped package. "The girls made something for Sophie," he explained. It was a handmade scrapbook titled Sophie and Max's Adventure. Inside were photos of them together, ticket stubs from the day we brought Max home, and even newspaper clippings about therapy dogs. The last page had a recent photo of Sophie speaking to her class about anxiety and service animals, Max sitting proudly beside her. "Because real strength," Peter's older daughter had written, "is asking for help when you need it." Sophie burst into tears when she saw it, happy tears this time. Max immediately pressed against her leg, doing his job, providing the comfort and support Diana had tried to take away. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep with Max curled at the foot of her bed, Mark and I sat in the kitchen reading Diana's final letter to the family. "I only wanted what was best for the family name," she wrote. "Children shouldn't need dogs to be normal. In my day, we handle things differently." In her day, Mark said bitterly, people suffered in silence. Kids like Sophie were told to toughen up instead of getting help. "And look how well that turned out," I replied, thinking of Diana's carefully maintained facade, her need to control everything and everyone around her. A week later, we received a package from the Therapy Dog Training Center. Inside was a certificate naming Sophie and Max as official ambassadors for their youth program. They wanted them to speak at schools about the importance of mental health support and the role of therapy animals. Sophie's face lit up when she read the letter. "Mom, can we do it? Can we help other kids understand?" "Of course," I said, hugging her tight. "Because that's what real strength is, not hiding your struggles, but using them to help others." We never heard directly from Diana again. She moved to Florida and started over in a new community where nobody knew about her disgrace. Her country club friends gradually stopped mentioning her, finding new topics for their gossip. But her actions had an unexpected positive effect. 3 families in our community, inspired by Sophie's story, got therapy dogs for their children. The local paper ran a feature on youth mental health support. Sophie's blog gained followers, creating a community of young people unafraid to talk about anxiety and therapy. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the Max incident, our family gathered for a celebration, not at Diana's perfectly maintained house with its strict rules and judgment, but in our backyard, where kids could be kids and dogs could be dogs. Watching Sophie laugh with her cousins, Max never far from her side, I realized Diana had succeeded in making Sophie stronger, just not in the way she'd intended. By trying to break their bond, she only proved how important it was. By attempting to force Sophie to conform to her version of normal, she helped my daughter become an advocate for being perfectly imperfect.